Welcome back to another web development video where I show you how to make modern websites using HTML5, CSS3, and a little bit of JavaScript. In this video I'm going to show you how to work with container backgrounds and backgrounds for different sections. With the advent of high-speed internet, larger and better images are made possible now. We also have some different ways in the code that we can make the images load a little bit faster and things like that. So images are a big part of the web now, and really big images, sometimes even full width, full height images are a big part of the web. So learning how to do that inside of Webflow is a pretty key component to doing some sort of designs, modern designs. So we're going to take our sidebar here, and we're going to use the background panel. And you scroll down to the backgrounds. It's near the bottom, not quite to the bottom, but below typography and positioning is the backgrounds panel. Now the default for a background is to be set to transparent. So any of these blocks that we've set, the default background is transparent. It looks white because on the body we have a white background, but if we were to go to the body and change the background to red, then everything would turn to red, because all of these boxes that are on top of the body, they don't have they have a transparent background. They don't have an actual background. So that's our default, and if we want a background, then we have to add a background. So we go to our image and gradient backgrounds, and we can add a few different things when we click the plus sign. So the first thing that we can add is a photo, so that'll be the first thing that we talk about here. You can see here that it just sort of fills in an example photo, and it gives you the option to do 2 times, which is like for retina screens, I think is what they're doing. But you can choose your image. I have a couple of images uploaded over here, and if I just hover over them, I can see a preview of the images. Now this, for a long time, is what we used to do if we wanted to add a border or background or something back in the 90s for a website. We would just use what's called a repeating background. And so if I click on my repeating background, I can see it here. Let's see what happens if I do that. Okay. So it's actually shrinking the size of this background for retina images. This is the original size of the background, and you can just see what it looks like. I get these, by the way, at a place called subtlepatterns.com or toptool.com/designer/subtlepatterns. If you just look up subtle patterns, it'll probably come up. It's a really cool resource to be able to get these different types of patterns just for backgrounds and stuff. So just a free resource out there for you to use. But this one is a very light gray, and the original file looks like this. So if I just open this, you can see what the original file looks like. It's just one square, and obviously it's been made so that it can be a repeating pattern, and there are no issues with it repeating, because you can see right here that there are no issues. It's seamless, and it's made for this particular purpose. So if you have some sort of image like this, it's a repeating background. We have the size as custom, and that just allows whatever the size of the image to just repeat itself. And what's happening is it's laying it out first here in the top left, and then it's going right next to it, and it's repeating this way, and when it gets to the end, it's coming down to the next row and repeating like this. And that's controlled here by the tiling. So if we only wanted to tile in a horizontal direction, we can just click this horizontal. You can see that it doesn't come down and fill in any of the vertical space. If we only wanted to tile in a vertical direction, then there's one here and then there's one here. And if there's no tiling, then that means that there's only the one image. It's not repeating anywhere. So this is sort of your repeat. How do you want it to repeat? So horizontally, repeat vertically, or repeat horizontally and vertically. To do a fixed width background is to, if we can see it, we can't see it as much here. We'll see that whenever we're doing whenever we're doing the images, you can see it a little bit better. But it's kind of a cool, easy effect that you can do. And then if we wanted to do these, we'll work on these whenever we have an image. You're probably not going to do that because what it does is it tries to use the single image to cover the entire width and height of the container. So you can see that our image is not nearly as big as our container, so it's going to really stretch it out in order to try to make it fit. That's not what we want. So that's using some sort of repeating background. Let's say we want to add an image though. So we click on our image here. We have this nice image background, and what's going on here is that this image is pretty big, so it takes up, it's bigger than our container, so it takes up the full width and height, and in fact it goes up and over. It's way too much. Tiling is not a big deal, although you can set it to not tile or to repeat if you want to, but the setting that we most often are going to use for an image is going to be a size of cover. And what cover does is it makes sure that the entire image is covering the container that it's trying to fill. And if the container is too big for the image to fit neatly into it, then the image will scale in order to meet that container size. And you can see that here. You can see that the image is just in the background, and as more of it is revealed, we reveal more of the background. But as we come out, so now we're starting to get dimensions of the image that are not the same size. So this is like the full dimension of the image. But as soon as we get wider than that, it needs to start scaling this image so that it can fill the entire background. And it does that all the way to its very largest size, which is here. So if you don't like what's in the image, you can change the position of what is stretched, like where it gets stretched from. So another way to think about it is, what part of the image do you want to show all the time? So a lot of times center, so 50% from the left, 50% from the top is the middle. That's the part that you want people to see if the focus or the part that you want them to see is in the center of the photo. If it's in the top left of the photo, you would choose top left. If it's bottom left, top right, and center left. So let me show you what it looks like whenever we're doing the centering. So you can see that it's growing. It begins to grow from the center, and the center stays in focus. We'll show here. Okay, so now it looks like it's growing sort of this way. So this is staying as a central focus, and then it's growing out this way. Same thing with the bottom left. You see how it feels like it's growing from the bottom left. The bottom left is staying stationary, while the entire rest of the image is scaling up and to the right. And so you can just sort of see, if you want this side to remain, then it will scale so that this right side remains. And same thing for the left side. It'll scale so that the left side remains. Most of the time you're going to want to do center, unless for some reason you have a person's face or something like that over here on one side or the other, and you want to make sure that that face is always in the picture. You can also change the height of the container depending on the different viewport widths as well. So if, like for this, if we wanted to see more of the image, then we could just make this a larger container, a taller container. So you can manipulate the width as well. And that's also something that you can manipulate at the level of the at the breakpoint levels. So the container can be different heights at different viewport widths. So let's say, you know, here we wanted to see a little bit more of the container. I mean, a little bit more of the image. So you can sort of set it that way so that we see a little bit more a vertical orientation of this image. So that is a little bit about background images. Let's see if there's anything else on here. You can do contain, but what contain does is it takes the original size of the image and it doesn't try to stretch it to fit the size of the container. It just sort of gives you the image with whatever around it. I know that there are a few times that I've used contain, but it's not something I use really often. Sometimes if I have what amounts to a border left to right that sort of goes off the page, sometimes I'll use contain to just keep it from covering the whole section. You know, you want it to stretch across the page, but you don't want it to cover the entire section. So sometimes that happens. But more than not, you're going to use cover with an image and not repeat. Like not repeat like this. Let's see, what would it be? Oh, it's probably not going to repeat anyway because you're using such a large image. But there are other options for backgrounds. You could use a linear gradient, and then you would come in and you would choose, you know, you choose how far that color goes down the container, and you can choose your color. Let's see, you know, do something like that, and then on this other side you would choose the second color, which is white, and you could do something more like, you know, more like that. So you can actually create a linear gradient background. You can also rotate it so that, you know, this part here goes to a different part or a different section of the container. So you can create some pretty cool gradients that way. You can use a radial gradient. So let's say you have a product image centered right here. You can sort of fake studio lighting setup by having, it's like putting a light behind the product here, and then you have the product sort of sitting over the top of the background. And then the last one is, what is this? Oh, just a regular cover or color overlay for the background. So you can do all the way completely opaque, or you can do any sort of gradient in between. But you can actually have just a regular, you know, dark color to your background as well. So that's an option as well. You can put in a hexadecimal code. You can use HSB. Oh, if you click this, you can change these. So this is like hue, saturation, what's it called, brightness now? It used to be hue, saturation, luminance. Or you can use an RGB color. So there are lots of different ways to get this, or you can just use a color picker. Well, okay. So that takes you to this Webflow Chrome extension to use a color picker. But you can just go through and choose a color as well. So those are the different options that you have for a background. You could theoretically add multiple backgrounds so that if you had, let's say, a background image with cover, center, and I'm totally making this up. And if I put this green color over the top of it with a little bit of opacity, then you can see that I'm creating sort of a color overlay. So it allows me to put two background pieces over the top of one another, and then you could even add a third with a linear gradient. What would it be? Like this, and maybe something kind of cool, and the second one here, something like that. That's a little bit too Christmassy, something like that. And then we have 3, and then for this one you can we drop the opacity? I don't know. No, it looks like we have to drop the opacity here, so we'd have to do that. So you can create some interesting effects by layering the different colors in the background, like that. So whatever your heart desires, whatever you wanted to do, you could remove this one, the green, and just have sort of a two-tone or a duotone kind of look to it, where you come in and you have a couple of different colors that are sort of blending together and bleeding together over the top of the background. So those are all possibilities, and there's any number of things that you can do, but this is a super important part of modern web design, is learning how to control your backgrounds, because we're always doing things with text like this on top of a background, and then you would come in and maybe just have a white text over a background like this. This is a very common pattern in web development, and this is how you would do it. And then using some positioning flexbox or something like that, you can get this centered or over to the left, or however you want it to be centered inside of the container. It's just important for you to remember that the sidebar is the one that has the background, not any of these elements. These elements are inside of sidebar, and the background is on sidebar, so these can move around freely just like you normally would with any sort of container. It's just that the container happens to have a background image or color to it. And I told you I'd show you the final thing with this photo, and that's to do a fixed or a not fixed background. And so the default is not fixed, and fixed means that when the user scrolls, the background is fixed in place. Normally it sort of goes with the entire document, but this is kind of like absolute positioning, or fixed positioning, where it takes it out of the flow of the rest of the page and it just sort of sticks there on the screen. So I'll show you when we go into the website here. You'll be able to see it better, but you can see how we're going to be able to see the entire image, and you've seen this look before. And this is actually a CSS property. This is not some fancy JavaScript or anything. If you just want to have one section with a background image that's fixed, all you have to do is apply the fixed value to that property. So, and that's here. And then if it's not fixed, and we publish, you can see the difference between the two. And if it's not fixed, you can see that when we scroll, it goes right with the section. Okay, so that's the difference between a fixed background and a not fixed background. So hopefully that answers some questions maybe that you had about backgrounds and dealing with backgrounds in CSS, and specifically in Webflow. If you have any questions or comments or concerns about it, just leave them in the comments section below. And if you would share the video, that'd be great. Click the thumbs up. That's an easy way for you to support my channel and to support me. And if you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button and then click the bell, and you'll receive notifications each time I upload new videos. And usually 1 or 2 a week. This week is a little bit of a special week because I'm sort of pumping out a lot of these videos, but they're shorter, and there's just a lot of things to be able to cover as far as this particular topic is concerned. And be sure to check out other playlists on my channel as well. There's a lot of general web design and design advice as well. I think that's it for now. thanks for sticking with this series. If you have any suggestions with the series or things that you want me to cover that I've sort of skipped over, I'm not covering, please leave those in a comment for any of these videos, and I'll get to it. All right, I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.